Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim. The Lost Minaret of Tatartup, Religious Devotion and Coexistence in the Northern Caucasus. In the early summer of 1869, the English mountaineer Frederick William Freshfield sailed from Trebizond on the northeast Turkish coast to the port of Poti in Georgia. We came on deck at sunrise so as to lose nothing of our approach to the Caucasian shores. The steamer was running quickly across the fine bay which forms the eastern end of the Black Sea. Before us rose ridge behind ridge, until behind and above them all towered the peaks of the central chain of the Caucasus, scarcely telling their height to the eye uninitiated in mountain mysteries, but showing us plainly enough that we are in the presence of an array of giants, armed in like panoply of cliff and ice to those we had so often encountered in the Alps. One great dome of snow, which conspicuously overtopped all its neighbours, we hailed as Elbrus. Like many travellers long before and after him, Freshfield was taking one of the many routes through the Trans-Caucasus, which led to the Darial Pass, known to Strabo and others in antiquity as the Caucasian Gates. The principal passage northwards through the centre of the Great Caucasus Range, stretching from the Taman Peninsula on the west to Derbent on the Caspian Sea to the east. He was aiming to climb Europe's highest peak, the volcano of Mount Elbrus and Mount Kazbek, the source of the Terek River, which taps major tributaries from the range's northern slopes to become the principal river system in the north-central Caucasus. Lower downstream, the Terek passes through another lesser defile, known as the Hotovsky Gate, to water the fertile plains of Kabardia, the territory of the ancient Alans. Here, in what was to become known as the Julat region, a settlement was established by the Alans in the 10th century on the southern approaches to the strategic pass. The town grew quickly and by the beginning of the 13th century had become an important centre and market along the north-south trade route, a major conduit not only for goods but also for beliefs and ultimately for the message of Islam, which in the 13th to the 14th century became the prevailing religion in the northern Caucasus. In 1238 to 39, the Julat region was conquered by the Mongols. The city of Upper Julat was ravaged but quickly recovered, and in the 14th century became the Golden Horde's principal centre on its southernmost periphery. Under Tokhta Khan, 1292 to 1312, the pass through the Darial Gorge was reopened for trade. Building activities in the Julat region, which had been initiated during his rule, increased under Uzbek Khan, 1313 to 1342, the first Mongol ruler to make Islam the state religion. In 1395, a massive army of Amir Timur decisively defeated Tokhtamış, Khan of the Golden Horde, on the plain between the Terek and Kuma rivers, a prelude to the demise of the Golden Horn. However, life of the city of Upper Julat continued unharmed, although changes occurred in the makeup of its population. In the 14th century, the Dagestani chronicle Tarikhi Derbent Name, it said that a large part of its inhabitants were Tatars coming from Crimea. Thus Upper Julat became more generally known as Tatartup. As in the past, the cultural and economic heartland of the north-central Caucasus in the following 15th to 19th centuries continued to be Kabarda, spread along the uplands of the Terek River system. Tatartup, however, was gradually surpassed by other regional centres, and by the 20th century, all that remained was the great minaret of its principal mosque, the tallest in the Caucasus. Since 1958, archaeological research by the North Caucasus expedition of the Archaeological Institute of the Russian Academy of Sciences has enabled the creation of a general picture of the life of this important regional city in its heyday. Excavations have focused primarily on the ruins of 2 mosques and 4 minarets, including one 6 kilometres away from Tatartup, and 3 churches. The largest Juma Mosque was of rectangular plan with a flat roof and with the shortest axis directed towards Mecca. 300 metres away was a smaller mosque, also rectangular in form, but apparently roofed with 2 cupolas. Both mosques are considered by archaeologists to have been built at the end of the 13th to the early 14th century, probably during the time of Uzbek Khan. Alexander Pushkin recorded his impressions of Tatartup in his Travels in Erzurum, published in 1829. Pushkin recorded his impressions of Tatartup in his travels in Azran. The first remarkable place is the Minaret fortress. Approaching it, our caravan drove along a lovely valley between mounds overgrown with linden and plane trees. These are the graves of several thousands who died of the plague. The greenery spawned from the infected ash was full of flowers. To the right shone the snowy Caucasus. In front rose a huge wooded mountain. Behind it was a fortress. Around it are visible traces of a devastated all called Tatartup, and which was once the main one in Bolshaya Kabarda. A lonely minaret testifies to the existence of the disappeared village. It rises slenderly between piles of stones on the banks of a dry stream. The inner staircase is not yet collapsed. I climbed up it to the platform from which the mullah's voice is no longer heard. There I found several unknown names scrawled on the bricks by opulent travellers. By that time, Tatartup, with its great minaret, had become both a symbol of Islam and of regional identity generally, and was a sacred place accorded great reverence throughout the Muslim northern Caucasus. It is frequently mentioned in the folklore of the Kabardians and Ossetians and neighbouring mountainous Georgia. There it was considered forbidden to commit any violent acts and was a place where serious oaths were taken. However, the history of Upper Julat or Tatartup was not exclusively one of Islam and Muslims. It was also a unique centre of Christianity in the northern and central Caucasus, and of remarkable confessional coexistence, attested by the archaeological record, which reveals an equal number of mosques and churches in the city, as well as written records. In 1410, a German, Johann Schultberger, travelled from Derbent to Tartary, visiting on his journey the mountain country of Julat, populated by a large number of Christians who had a bishopric there. Their priests belong to the Carmelite order, who do not know Latin but pray and sing in Tatar, so that converts would be stronger in their faith. For this reason, many heathens take the Holy Cross as they understand what the priests read and sing. Archaeological evidence dates the Upper Julat churches to the end of the 13th or first half of the 14th century, and their material and construction techniques indicate that they were built by Muslim craftsmen, thus connecting them with the Muslim monuments in a distinctive, united historico-cultural complex. The churches of Upper Julat cannot be viewed in isolation from its Muslim buildings. Of the 4 churches excavated, of particular interest is the presence of domed crypts under the altars of 2 of them, unique architectural features in the northern Caucasus, and are a feature connected with Latin Catholic worship. Of even more interest is that the crypts are of a dome form and construction type exclusively used in Muslim structures in other regions of the Golden Horde. In the 1260s, the Genoese and Venetians began commercial expansion in the northern Black Sea region. There is abundant documentary evidence of their activity in the western Caucasus, the steppe lands north of the Caucasus Range, as well as in Dagestan and the Trans-Caucasus. Roman Catholic missionaries were also active. Their congregations are reported in the Caucasus from the 13th up to the 15th century. Therefore, there is nothing really surprising about the appearance of Latin Christian churches and congregations in Tatartup. As late as the beginning of the 19th century, Circassian legends were still being passed on that the churches of Tatartup were built by Franks who had settled among the Tatars. In 1771, the Baltic German Johann Anton Guldenstadt reported 2 churches are still functioning in Tatartup, whereas in 1745, 3 had been recorded by Russian Georgian missionaries. As happened with the mosques of Tatartup, its churches too were ultimately abandoned as the community ceased to be viable, leaving only its great minaret standing. In the 20th century, a road was built close by. The vibrations of increasing passing traffic in the 1970s led to stresses in the structure, and despite attempts to stabilize it, the minaret totally collapsed in the early 1980s. Today, Tatartup lies invisible beneath cornfields. In recent years, there has been a strong revival of local interest in this important vestige of the cultural heritage of the Northern Caucasus. As a source of regional pride, increased archaeological research into Tatartup is being supported by the Council for Cultural Heritage of the Republic of North Ossetia, with sponsorship from the local Tatartup Fund. Community activities are engaged in caring for the site, and regional news media are regularly covering developments there. There are hopes that it might be transformed into a historico-architectural park and a regional focus for ethno-cultural tourism, and as an exemplary witness to the way Muslims and Christians of diverse origins and affiliations lived in constructive harmony during a formative period in the history of the Caucasus.